All right, what is up, Partner Up? We're back. I got Isaac in the chair, and my favorite thing in the world, Isaac, it's someone that's a lot like me.
You love you some you, huh?
Oh
Yeah,
my gosh.
Hearing another person say stuff that sounds exactly like stuff you've been saying. I saw that look on your face. You were like, yes, see,
So what's up, everybody? We have Aaron McGarry in the chair, the Chief Ecosystem Officer at Qualtrics. Aaron, welcome to Partner Up.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate you having me. I'll take it as a compliment that we think very similarly, Jared.
We got someone that's overseeing, next to close to $1 billion. It's not quite $1 billion, I believe, but in round numbers, we're talking a big ecosystem, and has seen a lot across multiple companies, including Salesforce, and now at Qualtrics. So Aaron, in our kind of like pre-calls and catching up before the show, maybe we can kind of start with the state of the market, because I think, everyone in partnerships that's finally going, you know what, I'm going to make a career here. This is the new, top of the hill, the Chief Ecosystem Officer title. So, talk to me a little bit about why you think, we're sitting right in the saddle of this partnerships, ecosystem moment. What's happening in your alignment with the sales organization and outbound, et cetera? Maybe let's start there.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about what's going on in the market, right? When you think about where we're at, companies like Salesforce really figured this out and were pioneers around it. If you can build a robust ecosystem, when I say ecosystem, I don't mean just one partner type, right? Not just SIs or something like that, right? Your technology partners, you have platform partners, co-innovation partners, resellers, like the whole nine. But what Salesforce and many other companies have done really well is they've figured out that the bigger, badder, and broader their ecosystems are, and the more ingrained they are in their go-to-market, the more successful the overall business can be. You end up seeing higher renewal rates, you see happier customers, you see much larger deal sizes, much more strategic deal sizes, and attrition kind of goes to zero, right? If you do it right, because you've created an ecosystem around an ecosystem, which almost, I don't want to say locks a customer in, but you kind of get the point, right? It becomes so integral and ingrained to what they do, that's very hard to shift, right? And as you build a recurring revenue model company, those are stats that you really, really, really care about. When you look at the broader macroeconomic environment that's going on right now, what's happening, right? It's hard to sell, right? Companies are getting very strategic with their dollars and where they spend them, and they're leaning and working with their trusted advisors to help guide them through what technology they need to consume, what solutions they need, what problems they need to solve, right? And the ecosystem has a very key moment in history right now to do that. And then you layer in what's happened, right? All of a sudden, it's been 24 months now, we shifted gears. We went from, let's go capture massive market share at all costs, right? Doesn't matter if you're profitable, you could still have a successful IPO, you can be killing it, right? Plenty of publicly traded companies not making any money, right? Now that game's totally shifted. Everyone cares about profitability. Everyone cares about cost of sale. And I think the ecosystem can play a huge component over the next 5 to 10 years to completely flip the paradigm of a lot of companies being very, very direct focus in how they do everything from generating leads, pipeline, everything else, all the way through, how you close that business and all that is very direct focus. I think the next generation is all going to be ecosystem led as we head into the future. So it's a very exciting time in the space.
You mentioned when we were chatting before the call, you were talking a little bit specifically about within the sales org, what's happening with SDRs. Just chat a little bit more about that. And like that, I think that's a really interesting, like very specific place where this shift and the relationship between partnerships and sales is starting to kind of unfold.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. Really good question, Isaac. So the reality of what we're seeing across the board, and I'm not speaking about Qualtrics, I'm speaking about the industry as a whole, right? And what my peers are all seeing that's happening. For the first time in history, SDRs are becoming, it's not working as well, right? The leads are not as qualified. they're lower value, and they're smaller. And companies have invested billions of dollars in that sales motion. And like in the first time in history, that sales motion is starting to break, right? At the same time, what we're seeing, and I'm fortunate, I get to spend a lot of time with mentors and peers around the ecosystem. And I usually try to have 4 or 5 conversations a week to understand what's going on broadly out there. Everyone's kind of lining up around the same stuff, which are ecosystem-led deals are dramatically more qualified. And I think anyone who's listening to this podcast probably knows why, right? So we can maybe talk about that in a little bit, but I'll park it for a second. We know they're dramatically more qualified. We know they close faster. Depending on the company, they're 3 to 10 times the size of direct source deals. And when you look at a go-to-market model and how do you make a profitable go-to-market model that has best-in-class cost of sales, that legacy SDR, BDR, kind of ground game, cold calling type of approach to drive up pipeline that then ultimately ends up converting into closed deals, that dynamic is changing underneath our feet right now and very, very quickly. If you were to make investments, where would you want to make those investments right now? Taking that lens, would you want to invest it in a place that could make you some money, maybe a little bit, right? But it's going to have high cost sale, or invest in an area where holistically those deals are going to be dramatically larger, stickier, close faster, be more strategic, have a huge upside that comes later that grows. I think as people are figuring this out now, they're all leaning into that direction. And you can see it with some of the motions, like huge players, Amazon, Google, Microsoft, the way they're leaning in is evolving and changing. I mean, Google announced they want to drive 100% partner attach, as an example.
There was another company, which I won't name, but it's about a $10 billion company. And I was on the phone with someone that used to be a direct report to Satya. This company is doing, $10 billion SaaS company that we all know, and was talking to their new partnerships leader. And he said the same thing. He said, my goal over the next year is 100% partner attach. And I said, well, where are you at now? Because I know you guys do lots of co-marketing, but you're going to go from what to what? He's like, I think we're maybe 1 or 2%. I said, in 12 months? He said, in 12 months, board level decision, $10 billion company, from 1 to 2% partner attach to 100% partner attach. So from Google to, hyper-growth SaaS companies, there's clearly something here. One thing I wanted to call out, Aaron, and maybe dissect a little bit is we've used a lot of language around, like, let's say, partner-led. Like, we had our PLX summit last year, had 5,000 people there, our first event. And then, ecosystem-led, and we're partner hacker of the ELG Alliance. But part of the thing that I was having trouble with CROs and CMOs was getting that adoption when it was like, we're putting the partner or the ecosystem first. And a lot of the times, what I'm seeing VPs of sales or CROs respond to are like, hey, what can we go do right now? And a lot of times, like, getting that like first momentum to replace maybe some outbound activities with something else, like getting the answers to the test. Might there be, kind of like an opportunity, like, is there an opportunity for us to get a little bit more specific about, something we were talking about. You mentioned, for example, the 3 I's I was talking about, intel, influencer, intro, right? Those aren't led strategies. Those are like almost no-brainers, right? Like, why would you go through, let's say you're running an enterprise sales cycle, why would you go through procurement blind in a multi-billion-dollar company when you could get the answers to the test and all of the intel from someone else? So that's why we've been calling it Nearbound, and it had been resonating. Could you speak a little bit about that to us? Because at your stage, I would call Qualtrics pretty ecosystem-led, but not everyone's there. Could you comment on that for us, like on the state of the market, where we should be thinking and orienting, like how much we should be pushing the full-blown strategy versus, hey, we need W's on the board now?
No, it's a really good question, Jared. I think the reality, there's a lot of weight on partner leaders' shoulders these days. And I feel for everyone in these shoes, because we all have to go and transform ourselves into a new mindset, which aligns to what's going on in the market, which is, how do we put big wins on the board? How do we put big wins on the board quickly? And then how do we take that momentum and then evolve an entire company strategy to go drive that? And you asked me this question about the chief ecosystem title and all that stuff. Like, there's a lot of people that want to do that role. Like, that's your job. Your job at that point is to make a company ecosystem friendly and led over time and be able to take a concise strategy and drive it. And it depends on what kind of company you're at, right? We all have to keep in mind that lots of people deeply understand ecosystems and lots of people do not. And that's why I love some of the content you're putting out, like the 3 I's as an example. It provides something that's easy, tangible, and people can latch onto it and understand it. And if they've never worked with a partner in their entire life, right, you can take that guidance, you could implement it, deploy it, understand it, and see the value and start kind of creating that two-way street. But it depends where you are in your journey and your life cycle, right? If you're Google, who wants 100% partner attached, it is very clear that in their life cycle, they've made the decision, we're going to do this, right? Now, it's going to take time to get there. They're going to have to make investments. They're going to have to do all of that. But if you're starting at a place where you're attached, as the reference you gave is like 1 or 2%, right? And you, in 12 months, want to dramatically change that, you've got to get wins on the board very, very quickly. And I think a lot of that is enabling and training your field sellers so they understand how to get started. And you're taking yourself out of your shoes and putting it in theirs. Because the reality of all the like just epically successful enterprise sales reps I know who have done this for 15, 20 years, they can do this stuff in their sleep, right? But what about everyone who's on the journey to that, right? Those people didn't start that way. They probably started having no idea how to do it. So I think we have to roll out training enablement programs that are very easily consumed with the lens of putting up short-term wins to kind of give you the street credibility and the groundswell you need to go ask to make some of these bigger changes that need to happen. Because saying, hey, we're going to drive 100% partner attach is super easy, but actually doing it is very difficult and requires substantial investment in order to make that a reality.
So maybe to thread the needle then for the folks listening, because there's kind of like two major content hubs that are kind of emerging and like trying to help, right? I mean, that's why, I started this podcast and we started Partner Hacker was like, hey, we got to help. Is what I would say in response to you, Aaron, is it sounds to me like Nearbound is really the plays that like you can take to the sellers right now. But that's not a strategy for aligning your C-suite and developing programmatic, right, two-way things. And you need both. You need the plays because a seller is going to go, what the heck do I do with ecosystem-led or partner-led? Partner-led, you're going to have a partner lead the sell. Why am I here? But at the same time, you need both, right? So it's that balance between driving a company strategy and really being that change agent, that entrepreneur, the true executive and leader that builds enterprise value. Like, what a trite word, enterprise value. But hey, great C-suite, they know how to build enterprise value.
Yep.
And so it's a little bit of both. Maybe the next thing to kind of talk about is as it relates to partner attach and like kind of where to start there. It seems to me like, given the sentiment around outbound, the effectiveness overall. I mean, I've been on calls with dozens and dozens of sales leaders from millions of dollars in revenue to billions of dollars in revenue the past 3 months, and it's very clear that outbound activity is on a steady decline. Now, I don't mean the volume's up, but the effectiveness is going down. When it been at a median, like since direct response. I mean, gosh, Isaac, how did you and I both start our sales and marketing career? Direct response. So like literally writing letters and mailing them to people. So that's how Isaac and I got into copywriting and sales. We both did the same thing 12, 13 years ago. 1% was the conversion rate you're always looking for, right? 1% you're normal, 2% you're good, 3% you're a god. It's like the same as outbound, but now we're seeing those go down to basis points. So it seems like the appetite to replace some of those activities with other activities. So like if you're going to do the Nearbound plays, Intel, Influence, Intro, whatever, you still have to do a little bit of research. You have to share a little bit. right? You have to write a personalized email. You have to say, hey, here's who I'm talking to, and this is why I'm looking for this conversation or this influence. So I think that's where the enablement and the training kind of comes in, and giving them some very tactical examples. And of course, the best seller for that are sellers that have done it.
Absolutely. I think at the end of the day, when you think about this stuff, and this comes back to my comment on, there's a lot of weight on kind of partner and ecosystem leaders' shoulders right now. We're at a unique moment in history that I hope everyone truly understands and appreciates. Because of the point you just made, Jared, it's really getting hard. And why is it getting harder to close deals? There's an interesting macroeconomic environment going. I mean, pre-pandemic and kind of into the pandemic, to be honest, scaling companies was a lot easier than it is in the current environment right now. Tons of money flying around, tons of expense happening, all of that stuff, right? Now, people really care about where their dollars are going, and they're looking very, very closely at that. You gave the example of why would you walk into procurement blind? Yeah, it's not a good idea. If you walk into procurement blind, you're going to lose. Why wouldn't you walk into procurement with a point of view from someone who's actually worked with that procurement team before? It's kind of like if you compare it to if you met someone new, right, inside of a friend group. You would ask your friends hey, I met this person. I know they're running around in the friend group. They seem really cool. What's your experience been with them, right? It's that simple as your daily life. Well, when you go show up to an account in a deal and you want them to spend money with you, do you want to be the unknown person they don't know? Or do you want you and your dozen friends or however many are circling around in that world to all vouch for you, right? Jared's the real deal. He's awesome, right? He's great to work with. You want that kind of approach. And the market, I don't think, is going to get any easier on anyone in the next 24 to 36 months. It's probably going to get more difficult. And I just bring it back to, we have an opportunity to break free on ecosystems and really get out and run, showing that we can create a highly scalable, highly profitable go-to-market that not only helps us bring in new deals and close new deals, but they're better deals. They're better ones that scale over time. They're more sticky. They're happier. And the data is your best friend in helping you do that, because it's out there everywhere. And there's so many great guys like you both that are putting out content and sharing that data that helps arm people, but it's sitting on our shoulders. What you can't be at this current moment is the guy or gal that's hey, let's go get a coffee. We talk about maybe doing some things and then we never actually do them. You need to view yourself as a operator in this business, and hey, go get the coffee. That's fabulous, right? Build those connections. But if you're not building true business value with all of your partners right now and getting them to lean in hard, you are wildly missing a very interesting opportunity just because of what's going on holistically in the market.
It's funny when we start talking with people about, running these Nearbound sales plays, there's always this moment where it's okay, so tapping into people, buyers' trust for intel, intros, and influence. I mean, isn't that just normal sales? Isn't that just what salespeople do? And I think here's the key difference, right? Good salespeople do this already, but the thing you mentioned was scale, and then also the how quickly can you get to actual decision and actual movement? Because if you're running this kind of absent, let's say, a network of partners, you're kind of using either one of two things. You're putting out a generic call to some people that hey, I'm working this deal. Does anyone know anyone? Right? And you'll see this in internal company Slacks. Does anybody know anybody? And that's nobody knows what to do with that, right? And you're just creating noise because maybe 1 out of 20 of those people know, but who knows if they'll see it. So there's that approach. Or you're just relying on, you just happen to personally know, oh, I know these people who know someone at this company in this deal that I'm working. But the ability to say, building and maintaining those relationships, that's what the partner team is doing. And then bringing that data together so that you're only going to the 1 or 2 right people at the right time. Who do I need to talk to for this deal? I'm not just going to spam out there to a bunch of people. Do you happen to know anybody? I'm not just going to trust my brain to remember the right person. I'm going to actually look. Where do we have those overlaps? Where do we have those relationships? And then be able to kind of dial down. And like, that's where you start to scale that motion that comes naturally to sellers. But you can't scale it inside your brain, and you can't scale it by just spamming people and asking them open-ended questions. Can you help me? That's pretty interesting. I want to transition real quick though, because both of you, I've heard you say this, and I've heard people fight you on this. At least I've heard people fight Jared on this. Partner attach. Jared, we were just on an event the other day, where we did the kickoff for the Nearbound Summit, which we've changed. The partner-led summit, PLX Summit, is now called the Nearbound Summit this year. And we had an event kind of like kicking that off. And someone in the chat, you said something about partner attach. Like, that's the one I care about. That's the holy grail. That's the number you should be looking at. And someone in the chat was like, no, we need to fight about this. That's a terrible idea. I can attach a partner to everybody. It doesn't mean it's doing anything. And I would like to hear... Aaron, because you said the same thing when we started. You're like, it's partner attach. Talk to me about that. Why is that the right metric? And how do you do that well? Or maybe what are the pitfalls? Why do people push back on that?
Yeah, it's a great question. And maybe let's start at why people sometimes have a bit of a visceral reaction to partner attach, and then we'll talk about why it's so important. And by the way, Jared and I have been in the same shoes, and I have had people say the same thing to me. I think that, I was very lucky. I worked for a gentleman at Salesforce who's one of the most epic leaders I've ever met. His name's Mike Wolf, amazing human being. If you don't know Mike, you should know. And Mike told me long ago that I need to make sure I bring people on the journey with me, and that they understand the journey you're on, right? So when you think about sellers and attach and all this stuff, like you made a comment, Isaac, you're like, the really good sales reps know this stuff. I would actually change the verbiage a little bit. It's that very experienced reps that have worked in companies that have had really strong ecosystems, they know the power, right? But what about everybody else? Right? It's our jobs to bring them on the journey with us so they understand why these things are so important, and why we should do them. Now, that being said, let's talk about attach and the journey of that. I think people think attach is almost like a 4-letter word, right? Because they think, well, wait a minute, you're just going to attach partners to every deal, and then those partners are just going to grab onto us and take all the value from us, and we're not going to get anything in return. And to be honest, if you think about the journey, I'm sure that's happened at companies. I know of companies that's happened at, and it's happened at massive scale. And that's because you did attach wrong. So let's talk about doing attach right and why it really matters. So if you truly want to have an ecosystem-led go-to-market, attach is the only metric that matters. And it only matters really for 2 very core reasons. Reason number 1 is ecosystem is a team sport. If you want to get to massive scale that completely changes the growth trajectory of your company, then you really need to pay attention to what I'm about to say next, which is attach is the only metric that matters. Because if you want, let's just pick 75%. Let's say that 75% is the attach you want. That means that 75% of marketing activities include our partners. That means 75% of enablement activities include our partners. Just go down the list, right? Every core function of a company has a role to play. Product has a role to play. Now, how do you avoid the pitfalls of attach? There's only one pitfall of attach as a strategy. It's that your partners glob onto you and then they don't bring anything in return, right? All you have to do is design your partner program the right way and get very sophisticated with things like intelligent revenue routing, that when you have reps that are going to attach, have them attach early in the cycle so you don't run into the situation you brought up, Isaac, which is like, hey, does anybody know anybody at this partner? It's like, no. If we would have brought them in at the very beginning of the game and you would have picked the right partner, you wouldn't be having that conversation, so you can solve that problem. But inside of whatever CRM tool you want, you can curate what partners you attach. So in North America, the partners who source for you, who invest with you, who lean in with you, and I don't mean just the big ones, across all partner types, categories, and sizes, are the ones that are available to be attached. The partners you're going to play ball with in enterprise versus SMB, they're different partners. You should be curating that in a different way. Same thing like the partners in Asia and in Europe are going to be different than the ones you work with in North America. But if you can handle the one downside, right, which is making sure you only attach partners that source for you, you will create a massive flywheel scale event at your company where you no longer have to worry about, is a partnership one-sided or not? Are we creating that two-way street? Are we both creating value for both organizations? You solve that problem holistically, and then you drag the entire company along with you with what you need to scale it up. It's literally the holy grail of ecosystem metrics if implemented correctly. And I think that we all have an opportunity to really lean into that and be thoughtful around that. And in order to convince a company to switch to attach as a core metric, you really need to have those wins on the board that Jared was talking about earlier, right? The stuff that you can do Nearbound very quickly. So you gain the momentum, the street credibility to be able to do that and combine it with the data across the industry to showcase what's possible.
And one quick follow-up on that, everything that you just said, folks, that's a clip to go back and play again and again, and then share. Your setup on that, Aaron, was perfect too. So you are native to podcasts, even if you haven't been on the podcast circuit that much lately. Like, wow, pay very close attention to what I'm about to say. Here's how I've been handling that objection on my side, Aaron. I'd love your take on this. It's a simple cohort analysis to measure partner attach versus not, versus having this giant attribution debate, whether it's marketing or sales or success. Take any activity and then take any activity that's exactly the same that has partner attach. Are the outcomes better? Yes or no? It's really that simple. But getting in this argument of like, no, an SDR sourced that, or the AE did this thing, or marketing did that thing, or this person did this thing. The aggregate doesn't matter. Sure, it might matter on that individual one, but in aggregate, it doesn't matter at all. What matters is attach when it happens. Does it perform better? Yes or no? Well, then why not do more of it? I mean, we all know that attribution, I've been on a Chris Walker kick lately. He's keynoting the marketing day at the Nearbound Summit, the gadfly of the dark social world. So I've been working with Chris a little bit here and there. And we all know, if you go ask Google or any GA or any kind of analytics product, like, hey, where did this person come from? What's GA going to say? Like organic, right? Google, like search. And then the reality is you ask them where they came from and they'll say a person, right? How did you hear about us? A person or a company. And I think it's just such an easy way for us to eliminate that debate and the complexity from it. Just, does attach produce better results in aggregate against the same cohort somewhere else? Have you leveraged anything like that in terms of a simple way to like head that off at the pass?
No, I love the direction you're going with that, Jared. I think that the reality of business that we're in right now is this. Yes, we absolutely should be comparing those data sets and looking at them. But there's a couple other things I'd roll into that and think about. So, and it also depends on what technology you're selling and who you're selling it to, right? The thought of a single attribution model, like, hey, this came from an SDR or it came from marketing or whatever, right? You're making the assumption that we're selling an SMB product to a buyer who, with one reach out, is magically going to want to do a deal with us. And that can work for more simple products in more simple markets that are easier to sell to. That's not the environment most of us live in.
Right. Whether
you're a startup or you are a big enterprise player, I don't know, none of my peers live in that world anymore. The reality of how a deal gets done, and I spend a lot of my time in overall go-to-market strategy, not just ecosystem, but the direct side as well, is in order to close big deals, they're all multi-touch, right? They heard about you via a marketing campaign, or SDR, BDRs called into them a few times and got some folks going. Our partners reached out to them, and most of the time, from what I see, the partners they have C-suite, level engagement, serious buyer engagement on their side, and can really help you go much more dynamically. But it's multi-touch, right? And you want it to be multi-touch because you don't want to close a $100 deal, right? You want to close a $10 million deal. And the only way to do that is to kind of build that groundswell up. So I think having people understand, like, this is how deals are actually done at scale, especially as you sell more sophisticated products to more sophisticated buyers, combined with what you talked about, which is let's try it and let's compare it. Every company I've ever worked at, period, since the beginning of my career, the data sets almost all look the same. We know that the deals are better, they're bigger, they close faster, they're more sticky, and they have a revenue hockey stick 12 to 18 months out because everyone's combining to make that customer successful, right? And you need to put all that in there. But then there's also the fact of what's it costing us to spend time arguing about attribution?
That's my point. That's the point that I was making, right? Multi-touch or single touch, I actually don't care. It's that just in aggregate, does it perform better? Yes or no? Just answer that question for me before we have any other debate. Because I always find myself getting in the debate before the aggregate has even been analyzed. It's like, yep. I felt like it was Groundhog Day, and I won't call out the company, but it was a sample size of over 200 enterprise deals, over $100,000, right? So significant sample size, right? All closed won. And in these 200 deals, the win rate when there was partner attached was 53%, and the win rate without partner attached was 19%. And I'm like, please show me another metric in the entire business that correlates to almost a 3x, a 2.5x to a sales win rate. Like, am I crazy? Am I the only person that's not like, oh, this is undeniable, right? Like, why are we arguing about whether or not that partner did enough to get into the multi-touch attribution model? They're attached. They helped.
Well, you're 100% right. The challenge is almost like a cultural shift behind it. And I won't say what company this is from. It's not from my current employer. But I will tell you, I was fortunate enough at a point in my career to see a sample data set of 10,000 customers across 10 years. Spoiler alert, the data lined up very closely to what you just shared. But I think there's a huge debate going on, and I've talked to lots of my friends out in the ecosystem world. There's this huge debate that goes on around attribution. To be honest, to me, it's a total waste of time. It's expensive to have those conversations. It's expensive operationally to deal with them. It's expensive culturally to deal with them at the expense of teams, because you end up you want your entire team to win, right? Everybody wants to win. Everyone wants to advance their careers. Everyone wants to do that stuff, right? And if you end up creating this cultural friction from things like attribution, which, to be honest, just has nonstop downside. And it's something that it will evolve. I do, though, in very positive tone, I do think the attribution battle across ecosystems is going to be a thing of the past in a couple of years, because there's so many companies that are leaning in on ecosystem now that are trying to get incredibly sophisticated, that the sheer amounts of data that are going to come out to back up what we're all talking about right now is going to be so large that it's impossible to ignore.
I love that a little while ago you were talking about, look, these are multi-touch. There's all these different points along this journey with lots of different people. And then just a reminder, like when you're talking to people about running Nearbound plays, going to your ecosystem, it's not like saying, hey, we want you to do some radical new thing and take a chance on some strategy. It's literally just a recognition of the reality that's already happening. Like, this is already here. So you either recognize that and incorporate that in. I love Joe Rowley put it one time. She's like, outbound is interrupting your buyers, right? And sometimes you need to do that. Inbound is attracting your buyers. Of course you need to do that. Nearbound is surrounding your buyers. And you actually can't get rid of those other strategies, but recognizing that in addition to getting their attention, interrupting them, attracting them to you, you have to surround them and be a part of, what does Jay McBain say? There's 28 unique moments across a buyer journey or something like that. How many of those are you a part of probably not many, but who else is a part of
Jay
those?
says it's 5.
Yeah, like at most, right? And who else is a part of those though? Are you working with those people, right? So I love that. When you guys were talking about attach, the first question of any data set is to be like, oh, causation or correlation, right? So this is what I love about this though. If you're like, look, deals with partner attach, all the numbers are better, everything's better. Then if someone says, well, that could just be correlation. Maybe the causality is actually backwards. Maybe they're not better because you attach a partner. Maybe a partner was attached because it was already a higher quality, deal or customer. Either way, it doesn't matter because it's like, well, if you make partner attach the goal, it either forces you to attach partners in order to drive those or create better deals and have better things, which will result in partners being attached to them. So you're going to end up driving the things that you want, even if it's not always the causal factor, even if it's something that comes later, if you're doing things right and you have high quality, other steps in your process.
The economics and philosophy brain of Isaac Morehouse, everybody. That's why he's here. That's such an astute point, like in terms of how people evaluate data and the, Aaron, I call it ivory tower intellectualism. So these are the, seasoned CPAs and MBAs that like come in with their models and they try to say like, no, this is the way the world works. And it's like, you're ignoring the fact that like all that matters is the outcome.
I'll give you two interesting data points on that. And it kind of draws on Isaac's point and yours. So my experience throughout my career has been that the ecosystem motion in those accounts is 100% the reason those are growing and happening. But even if you don't believe me or anyone else like me in the industry and all the people who listen to this podcast, look at the most sophisticated scaling machines on the planet right now. Look at the hyperscalers. What's Google doing? What's Amazon doing? Where are they making investments? What are the announcements they're making? Do you think that Google wants 100% partner attached for fun? No, it's because they have the massive data sets and experience to know that is the reality that comes from it. That's kind of point one. Point two is it's funny, Jerry, talking about the ivory tower stuff. I'm going through my executive MBA right now. People are like, you're nuts, dude. Why are you doing this? You don't have time for this. I have no personal life anymore, but it has been very well worth it. I'm enjoying it. But I will tell you, there's a very massive difference for someone like me. I pride myself in being an operator and deeply understanding all facets of how an organization operates. How does product operate? How do they think? How does sales operate? How do they think? How does the C-suite operate?
Well, Aaron, real quick, how the market operates. I want to call out what you said. You said that you spend 4 to 5 calls a week talking to your peers. We call that living in market. So that's what I meant is that the ivory tower people don't ever live in market. So it's not to say that both isn't valuable, but go ahead.
No, it's funny because I've experienced this real time. Like I've loved all my professors. I'm fortunate to go to McCombs, University of Texas, top tier talent, right? And staff there from the professors. My favorite professors are the ones that were operators and then came into academia to give back versus the professors that have only been in academia and that's what they're doing. And I love them too, right? But the reality of the insights you drive, there is what looks good on potentially paper or in theory, right? And then there's how it actually plays out in reality in the field. And marrying the data sets with like real life experience and what the rest of the market is experiencing and paying attention to what is going on, combining those two things together is where you get, it's like superpower. That's why how I started this call. There's a unique moment in time that ecosystem leaders, like we all need to step up to be just hyper transparent. You need to deeply understand how business works and how these companies are working and how the market works so that when you have these conversations, you're coming from a place that you are hyper educated, you understand, and you can convey your points and advocate for your points in a way that resonates and lands with a constituent that you're talking to, right? And that means you need to understand where they're coming from and where their business is coming from. I see a huge trap that lots of partner people lean into and they always come from the partner lens or partner hat only, you need to wear them all, right? If you want to be an executive in partner land at scale, you have to wear them all and you have to deeply understand it and drive that coalition to be able to do that. Because if you don't, you're basically going to be operating an ecosystem that's yours and it's your world versus it's core to the overall company strategy. And those are two wildly different things.
Implementing this, surrounding your buyer, bringing in those nearbound plays, going, tapping your ecosystem, reorienting the way you think about things. These don't happen overnight. These take time. So here's my question for you. If somebody's listening to this and their company, they're not doing this yet, is it too late? Like, when is a good time to start doing this? I know the answer is now, but what is the urgency you see, right? To your point, the market is shifting.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people, I'll frame it this way, a lot of people are problem aware, solution wary. They know the market's shifting. They know they can't keep doing more of the same, but they're kind of just waiting to see what's the next play. We'll just kind of hold steady for a while, even though we're getting declining returns before we make any major shifts in our strategy or our approach. When is it going to be too late to make those moves?
Yeah. I don't know that there's ever a too late. And I think it also depends on where the company is in their journey. But I come back to Mike Wolf and make sure you bring people on the journey with you. The data points, the views, they exist and they live today. So for people that are sitting and waiting to try to act, why? All the market leaders already are. They're already pivoting and shifting quickly into this area. So you can either be a market leader or you can be a laggard, right? It's kind of up to you. But even if you're a laggard, you can still implement and catch up later. But I just think, we've never had this point in time where revenue's been so hard to get, at least over the last decade, right? Which creates a unique opportunity that we can all step into. But we have got to bring the message together and advocate for it. And my strategy has always been, throughout my entire career, let's put some wins on the board. Let's gain the credibility. Let's build the momentum. And then let's go pitch massive transformation. Because if you try to go pitch massive transformation, you never brought them along the journey with you personally on how you're winning and how you're getting things done, you're going to fail. Unless you just work for someone who just totally gets it, right? And is deep expertise in this space and all that, it's pretty, it's not going to happen. And if you do have that scenario, that's awesome. Good for you. You probably don't need to spend boatloads of time thinking about how to pitch them, right? Just go talk to them and say, here's what I need to do. But I love that 99% of us live in that world. I think it's a world that we need to educate and bring people on the journey so they understand it. But fast forward 5 years from now, dude, there's going to be chief ecosystem officers everywhere. And I'm not going to name the companies, but I've talked to 5 people in the last 2 weeks about where they're putting their investments, right? And these are not partner people. These are CEOs, CFOs, CLOs. And the really savvy ones are already leaning in this direction very quickly. And they're starting to pick up on it. So the groundswell is happening. We just need to capture it and get after it. And you'll rise the entire ecosystem tide, by the way, by doing that. The more successes that come out of our ecosystem that we're talking to right now, the more data that hits the street, the more proof points we have, you're actually blazing the path for the next generation of you to be able to come in here and hit the ground running as hard and fast as humanly possible.
Wow. Aaron McGarry, everybody. This is what it takes to be a chief ecosystem officer. Aaron, thank you so much for setting that bar. I don't think that I've ever heard such a practical and just poignant and salient, piercingly clear point from anyone that I've had on the show is what you said on this episode today around aligning partner attach and operationalizing that to only attach partners who source. So I think we intuitively get something like that, but that key is so important. And I think you can get a lot of buy-in there from the rest of the team, kind of bringing it all home. So yeah, go run plays, but then that's the key to how you get everyone bought in. Because if marketing is getting a little something, if sales is getting a little something, success is getting a little something, then they know they have to help back. And it's just such a salient point. Aaron, thank you so much for coming on PartnerUp. This is going to be definitely one for the books. Lots of history shared together. Quick question before we wrap. Do you know a gentleman by the name of Bobby Napoltonia? He preceded Wolf at Salesforce.
I know the name. I've never met him personally.
It's hilarious because the same exact stuff that Wolf was telling you is what Bobby told me. He was my mentor, and it was the same thing. He was like, here's how I got the wins on the board to get Benioff to put as a top 3 company objective at company kickoff. Benioff stands up and goes, partners are at the center of everything that we do. And he said, everything changed at that point. He said, but I flipped Accenture first, right? Like flipped the biggest SI away from Siebel over to Salesforce. And then everything came in. So it's both. And wow, Aaron, thank you so much. Isaac, before we wrap, nearboundsummit.com. It's live. Everybody go register.
Absolutely. Go register. Early registrants get some special perks, free handbooks sent to you, workbooks for the event, and some other fun stuff. And I got to shout out the blueprint, by the way, the Nearbound Sales Blueprint, because this episode, there were so many moments when I was hearing Aaron talk about, hey, if you want 75% attached, 75% of your activities should be focused that way. I was like, Jared, it's right out of the blueprint. You open up with this, like, look, whatever that target is for you, if you don't have the resources aligned to that, if you say we want 35%, whatever it is, and you're only, how many of your activities are actually geared towards that way? I thought it was awesome. So there's so much in there, very much in line with this episode, but for partner teams and sales teams to start working together, and to Aaron's point, like crawl, walk, run, get that win on the board, go find that, the deals that you can influence, bring partners into right now, this month, this quarter, then you'll have that proof to be able to go beyond. And that's exactly what the blueprint is all about. So definitely go check that out. That is on nearbound.com.
Awesome. Aaron, thank you so much. PartnerUp. Peace out. We will see you all next time.